The crystal palace of the Volanthi Empire rose from the planet's surface like frozen music. Its towers caught the light of 3 suns and scattered rainbows across the landing platform where the human shuttle touched down. Ambassador Grace Holloway stepped out first, her diplomatic robes flowing in the thin wind. Behind her came Cole Maddox. He was not what the Volanthi expected. The gathered nobles had skin like polished black glass, smooth and perfect. Not a single mark marred their bodies. Their culture had spent 10,000 years perfecting medical technology that erased every wound, every blemish, every sign that the universe had ever touched them. To the Volanthi, unmarked skin was proof of worth. Scars were shameful things, evidence of failure, of weakness that should have ended in death. Cole Maddox's face was a map of violets. A thick ridge of scar tissue ran from his left temple to his jaw. Burns covered the right side of his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. His hands were rough with old cuts, and when he moved, it was with the careful economy of someone whose body had learned to expect pain. The Volanthi stared. Some made sounds of disgust behind their jeweled hands. Others simply looked away, as if the sight of him was too obscene to bear. Cole kept walking. His expression did not change. Grace had warned him about this. She had offered him synthetic skin that would cover the scars, make him presentable by galactic standards. He had refused. She had not asked why. She already knew. The reception hall was a cathedral of light. Delegations from 4 great powers mingled beneath chandeliers that floated without support. The Kytheran clicked and chirped in clusters, their insect bodies gleaming with ceremonial oils. The Morvathi drifted in portable water spheres, their tentacles gesturing in patterns that served as speech. And everywhere, the Volanthi moved like dark sculptures come to life, beautiful and cold. Humanity had been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Concord 6 months ago, the lowest tier, the position reserved for species that had not yet proven their worth. This summit would determine whether Earth rose higher or remained where it was, tolerated but not respected. Grace worked the room with practiced skill. She smiled at insults, nodded through condescension, planted seeds of alliance where the soil seemed fertile. Cole stayed 3 steps behind her, watching. He noticed the young Volanthi prince before the prince noticed him. Prince Vorath Kael'than was the 3rd heir to the throne. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, which in many ways he did. His ceremonial armor was inlaid with gems that shifted color when he breathed. His blade, hanging at his hip, had a handle of carved crystal and an edge that had never tasted blood. His eyes found Cole, and something cruel lit up in them. The prince approached with his entourage flowing behind him like a dark tide. They stopped in front of Cole, and the conversations around them grew quiet. This was theater. Everyone understood their role, except the human who was supposed to be humiliated. Vorath let his gaze travel slowly across Cole's face. He traced a finger through the air, following the path of the largest scar. "Does your species not possess medical technology?" The prince's voice was silk wrapped around broken glass. "Or do you simply enjoy displaying your inadequacies?" Cole met his eyes. "Every species has different customs, Your Highness." Vorath's entourage laughed. The prince smiled, but there was confusion beneath it. He had expected shame, anger, some reaction he could use. Cole gave him nothing. "Perhaps your people send their damaged ones as diplomats," Vorath said, a way to dispose of waste while appearing civilized. "Perhaps," Cole's voice was flat, "or perhaps we send our most experienced." The prince's smile faltered for just a moment. Then he laughed and moved on, his entourage trailing behind him. The whispers began immediately. "The scarred human, the broken soldier. Did you see his face? How does he show himself in public? That could have gone worse. Give it time." Across the hall, an old Volanthi warrior watched the exchange with ancient eyes. High Commander Cyrith had fought in 3 galactic wars. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had stood on battlefields where the dead outnumbered the living. She looked at Cole Maddox, and she did not laugh. She remembered. The night cycle came to the palace, and the diplomatic functions continued in softer lights. Cole found a balcony overlooking a garden of plants that glowed with their own inner light. He stood alone, watching stars he did not recognize. Grace found him there. She moved quietly, but he heard her anyway. He always heard everything. "They're calling you the scarred pet," she said. "The damaged goods humanity brought to heal at their master's table." "I know. The Morvathi delegate asked me if you were mentally impaired. The Kytherin think you're some kind of punishment we're inflicting on them." Cole said nothing. Grace stood beside him looking at the alien garden. "You could have worn the synthetic skin, hidden the scars, made this easier." "No." Something tightened in Cole's jaw. A micro expression, there and gone. "I couldn't." Grace nodded. She knew about Harkness 4. She had read the classified files, watched the tribunal recordings, studied the psychological evaluations. She knew what had happened to the colony. She knew what Cole had survived. She knew what he had done to survive it. "The Volanthi are using the summit to position themselves for a resource grab in human space," she said. "They need us to look weak, primitive, unworthy of respect. You being here looking like you do plays into their narrative. Or it doesn't." "What do you mean?" Cole turned from the stars. In the dim light, his scars looked like cracks in stone, places where something had tried to break him and failed. "They see weakness, because that's what their culture taught them to see. Unmarked skin means you've never been tested. It means nothing has ever tried to end you." He touched the scar on his jaw. "I've been tested, Grace. I've been tested in ways that would break anyone in that room. And I'm still here." "That's not how they see it." "Not yet." Cole walked past her toward the door. "Give it time." In her chambers, Commander Cyrith called up old files she had not accessed in years. Tribunal recordings from the Harkness 4 incident. She watched a young human male move through darkness, using weapons he had pulled from dead hands, fighting with a ferocity that had nothing to do with training, and everything to do with desperation. 37 Volanthi raiders had landed on that moon. One human had walked out. Cyrith watched the recordings until dawn, and she did not sleep that night. 3 days into the summit, the insults had become routine. The Volanthi had mastered the art of elegant cruelty. They spoke of humans as if they were interesting animals, worthy of study, but not respect. They debated whether humanity possessed true intelligence or merely clever mimicry. They wondered aloud if human emotions were real or simply programmed responses. And always, always, they stared at Cole's scars. The negotiations had stalled. Every proposal Earth put forward was buried in procedural delays. Every alliance they tried to build was quietly poisoned by whispers. The human delegation was provisional, temporary. Why invest in creatures who might not survive their first real test? Cole watched it all. He said nothing. He waited. The morning of the 4th day brought a ceremony. The Volanthi tradition of blade gifting, where honored guests received ceremonial weapons as signs of respect. The blades were beautiful things, crafted by masters, sharp enough to split light itself. The Kytherin delegation received matched daggers with handles carved from singing crystal. The Morvathi were given water-forged steel that would never rust. Each gift was presented with poetry, with bowing, with all the theater the Volanthi loved. When the human's turn came, Prince Voroth stepped forward. He carried a blade in his hands, but it was not like the others. It was small, dull-edged, the kind of weapon given to children learning their first forms. "For the human warrior," Voroth announced, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "A blade suited to his skill level. We would not want him to hurt himself." The court erupted in laughter. Crystal voices rang against crystal walls. The sound went on, and Cole stood in the center of it, like a stone in a river. He stepped forward. He accepted the child's blade with a formal bow. "Thank you, Your Highness. I will treasure it." His voice was flat. His face showed nothing. The laughter continued, but something in it changed. Some of the nobles exchanged glances. They had expected rage, shame, tears, perhaps. The human gave them nothing to feed on. Grace's face was carved from ice. She would remember this. The Volanthi had just made an enemy they did not understand. That afternoon, Cole walked the servant corridors of the palace. The back passages where the lowborn moved, carrying trays and cleaning floors and pretending to be invisible. They froze when they saw him, then relaxed. He was not Volanthi. He was not anyone. Just a scarred creature from a primitive world. He preferred it this way. The servants saw everything. They heard everything. And they spoke freely when they thought no one important was listening. A young Volanthi girl rounded a corner too fast. Her tray of crystal goblets hit the wall, and glass exploded across the floor. She dropped to her knees, gathering pieces, her hands shaking. A noble appeared behind her. His robes marked him as minor court, a small power with small cruelties. He raised his hand to strike. Cole caught his wrist. The grip was gentle, the way you would catch a child reaching for a flame. But the noble could not pull free. He tried. His face went dark with effort and fury. Cole held him like he was made of paper. "Don't." One word. The noble looked into Cole's eyes and stopped struggling. There was something there. Something old. Something that had seen this moment 1,000 times and made choices that still echoed in the dark. The noble left. The servant girl stared at Cole like he had grown wings. "You should go," Cole said, "before he comes back with friends." She ran. Cole stood alone in the corridor, surrounded by broken crystal that caught the light like scattered stars. That night, his door chimed. Commander Cyrith entered without waiting for permission. She was old by Volanthi standards, her black skin showing the faintest lines of age. Her armor had seen vacuum. Her eyes had seen things that would break younger soldiers. "You were at Harkness 4, she said. Cole stood by the window. He did not turn around. "I was at the tribunal, after." Cyreth's voice was quiet. "They showed us recordings. 37 raiders, 1 human survivor. The recordings were instructive." "Why are you here, Commander?" "Prince Vorath intends to challenge you to a duel tomorrow. Ceremonial blades, first blood. He believes it will be amusing." Now Cole turned. "And you're warning me?" "No." Her obsidian eyes caught the light. "I'm warning him, but he won't listen to an old soldier. Perhaps he'll listen to the outcome." She left without another word. Grace came an hour later. She carried data tablets and a face full of fury. "I intercepted communications. The Volanthi are using the summit as cover. They're preparing territorial claims on 3 human colony worlds. They need us discredited so thoroughly that no one will object when they move. The duel. The duel is theater. If you lose, humanity looks weak. If you refuse, humanity looks cowardly. If you win—" She paused. "Actually, they haven't planned for that. They don't believe it's possible." Cole picked up the child's blade from his desk. He turned it in his hands, testing the balance. "You don't have to accept," Grace said. "Yes, I do." "Cole, this isn't—" "They need to see." He met her eyes. "All of them. Every species in that room. They need to see what we are, what we survive, what we become." He set down the blade. "They think these scars are shame. They're wrong. Every mark on my body is a receipt, proof of purchase, evidence that something tried to kill me, and I paid the price to keep breathing." Grace was silent for a long moment. "What happened on Harkness 4? Cole walked to the door. "Tomorrow, after the duel, I'll tell you one thing. One piece of it. That's all I can give." "Why?" He stopped with his hand on the frame. "Because if I told you everything, you'd look at me the way the Volanthi do. And I need you to keep looking at me like I'm human." The door closed behind him. Grace stood alone, holding data tablets that suddenly seemed very unimportant. Across the palace, Prince Vorath practiced his forms. His blade moved in perfect arcs, slicing the air with precision. He had trained since childhood. He had studied under masters. He had never lost a duel. Tomorrow, he would humiliate the scarred human in front of the entire summit. Earth would be disgraced. The territorial claims would go unchallenged. Everything would proceed according to plan. He did not know that somewhere in the dark, Commander Cyreth was watching recordings again. A young human moving through shadows, bodies falling around him, weapons changing hands like a deadly dance. He did not know that the human had survived something that would have broken armies. He did not know that scars were not weakness. The grand proving arena had not seen real combat in 3 generations. It was a beautiful space. Columns of living crystal rose toward a dome of woven light. Seats carved from single pieces of obsidian circled the central floor. Every delegation had been invited. Every ambassador, every aide, every servant with enough status to stand in the back. Prince Vorath had made sure of that. He wanted witnesses. The prince entered first. His armor blazed with gems that shifted through every color of the spectrum. His entourage numbered 12, each carrying pieces of his equipment, his refreshments, his ceremonial accessories. He raised his arms, and the Volanthi crowd applauded like thunder. From his belt he drew 2 blades, real ceremonial weapons, edge honed to molecular sharpness, beautiful and deadly. Cole Maddox walked in alone. He wore his standard uniform, gray fabric, no decoration, no armor. In his hand, he carried the child's training blade that Vorath had gifted him 3 days ago. The crowd laughed. The Arbiter stepped forward to announce the terms. First blood would determine the winner. The prince could use any blade from his collection. The human could use what he had brought. More laughter. It echoed off the crystal columns and rang through the dome. Some of the Kytherin were clicking so hard their carapaces rattled. The Morvathi bubbled in their spheres with what could only be mockery. Cole reached up and removed his jacket. He folded it carefully and set it aside. Then he removed his shirt. The laughter died. His torso was a landscape of damage. Burns that spread across his ribs in patterns that suggested plasma fire. Long slashes that crossed his back. Scars from something with claws. A puckered circle over his heart, pink and raised, where a blade had gone through and somehow failed to kill him. Smaller marks everywhere, cuts, punctures, the evidence of violence so sustained it should have been impossible. One of the Morvathi made a sound. It was not laughter. Cole stood in the center of the arena, holding a child's toy, wearing his scars like armor. Begin, the Arbiter said. Vorath attacked with perfect form, academy technique, movements he had practiced 10,000 times until they flowed like water. His blade cut the air in beautiful arcs, advanced patterns that masters would applaud. Cole did not move. The blade kissed past his cheek. Blood welled from a thin cut, red on pale skin. The Arbiter raised his hand. First blood. The match. I haven't yielded. Silence crashed through the arena like a wave. Cole touched his cheek, looked at the blood on his fingers. His expression did not change. The terms were first blood wins, not first blood drawn. He lowered his hand. I've been bleeding since I was 19 years old, Your Highness. You'll have to do better than that. The crowd did not understand. Then, slowly, they did. First blood wins meant the loser acknowledged the wound. It meant surrender. It meant accepting that the fight was over. The human was not surrendering. Vorath's confidence flickered. This was not in his training. No one had ever simply refused to acknowledge a hit. He attacked again, faster now. His blade found Cole's arm. Blood ran down to his wrist. Cole stood like a statue. Another cut. Cole's shoulder this time. The blood soaked into his waistband. He did not move, did not flinch, did not even seem to notice. Vorath's form began to falter. He had never fought someone who did not react to pain. All his training assumed an opponent who would defend themselves, who would play by the rules of combat, who would acknowledge injury. The human just watched him with old, empty eyes. "What are you?" Vorath hissed. Cole did not answer. The prince attacked again, wild now, technique abandoned. He cut Cole's chest, his arm, his face. Blood ran freely, painting the arena floor. The crowd had gone silent. The Kytherin had stopped clicking. The Morvathi had stilled in their spheres. Even the Valanthi nobles watched without breathing. Cole Maddox stood in a pool of his own blood, holding a child's training blade, and he looked bored. Vorath lunged, a killing strike, aimed at the heart, everything he had left. Cole moved. It was not fast, it was not flashy, it was simply efficient. One step to the side, one movement of the training blade, Vorath's weapon spun from his grip and clattered across the floor. The dull edge of the toy pressed against the prince's throat. The arena held its breath. Cole leaned close. His voice was quiet, meant only for Vorath. "I could teach you what it costs to earn scars like mine, but the lesson would break you." He stepped back. He bowed formally. Then he picked up his shirt and jacket and walked out of the arena, leaving Prince Vorath kneeling in his gilded armor, surrounded by the blood of a man who refused to fall. The first person to applaud was Commander Cyrith. The sound echoed through the silent hall. Then others joined. Not the Valanthi nobles, the soldiers in the crowd, the guards, the old warriors who remembered what real combat looked like. Grace met Cole in the corridor outside. He was pulling on his shirt, ignoring the blood soaking through the fabric. "That was insane," she said. "That was necessary," he replied. "You could have died." His hands did not shake. "No, I felt dying. That wasn't it." "What was it?" He met her eyes. A conversation, in a language they finally understand. Behind them, the arena had erupted into chaos. Prince Vorath was being helped to his feet, his face gray with shock. The other delegations were talking in rapid clusters, reassessing everything they thought they knew about humanity. Grace walked beside Cole as they left the arena complex. "You promised to tell me one thing about Harkness 4. Cole was silent for a long moment. The raiders landed during a field trip. 26 children. 3rd graders. His voice was flat, empty. "I was their teacher. Elementary science." Grace stopped walking. "I got 11 of them out. That's the only number that matters." Cole kept moving. "Everything else is just the math of survival." He disappeared around a corner, leaving Grace standing alone, understanding for the first time why a man might wear his scars like medals. In the arena, Commander Cyrith approached her grandnephew. He was still kneeling where Cole had left him. "Now you understand," she said quietly. "What is he?" "Human." She picked up his fallen blade and pressed it into his shaking hands. "Just human. That's what makes it terrifying." That night, messages flew between delegations. Reports were compiled. Intelligence was shared. The human with the scars was not damaged. He was not broken. He was not weak. He was a survivor of something that had killed 37 Valanthi raiders. And somewhere in the dark, Prince Vorath sat alone with a child's training blade, practicing forms against shadows, trying to understand how a toy had become more dangerous than all his master-crafted steel. Rumors spread faster than light. By morning, every delegation had their own version of what happened in the arena. The Kytherin said the human had shrugged off 100 cuts. The Morvathi whispered that he could not feel pain, that humans had evolved beyond such weakness. The Valanthi servants, speaking in hushed tones, claimed he was a demon wearing human skin. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Cole Maddox was just a man who had decided, a long time ago, that he would not stop. The political landscape shifted overnight. Ambassadors who had ignored Grace Holloway now requested meetings. Delegations that had laughed at humanity's provisional status now spoke of future alliances. The territorial claims the Valanthi had been preparing quietly disappeared from official agendas. No one wanted to be the next Prince Voroth. The prince himself had become a ghost. He no longer appeared at functions. His entourage had shrunk to 3 servants who refused to meet anyone's eyes. The nobles who had laughed loudest at the human scars now pretended they had never seen the duel at all. Cole continued his duties as if nothing had happened. He stood behind Grace at meetings. He walked the corridors of the palace. He watched. He knew it was not over. The knock came on the second night after the duel. Cole opened his door to find Prince Voroth standing alone. No guards, no entourage, just a young Valanthe with something broken behind his eyes. "May I enter?" Voroth asked. Cole stepped aside. Voroth moved into the room like a man walking through water. He was carrying the child's training blade. His grip was different now. The way you hold something that has taught you a lesson you did not want to learn. "How did you survive?" Voroth asked. "The things that were done to you, the scars, how are you still alive?" Cole poured 2 glasses of earth whiskey. He set one in front of the prince. Voroth did not touch it. "You're asking the wrong question." "Then what is the right question?" "Not how, why." Cole drank. The whiskey burned in a way that felt like coming home. "I survived because I refused to be a lesson for someone else. Every scar is a reminder that something tried to end me, and I chose to be the one still standing when the story finished." Voroth stared at the glass. "That is not an answer. It's the only one I have." Silence filled the room like smoke. Voroth picked up the whiskey. He drank. His face twisted at the taste, but he did not put it down. "I have never suffered," he said quietly. "Not truly. Everything has been given to me. My title, my training, my confidence. I thought I was strong because nothing had ever challenged me. That's not strength. That's comfort wearing a mask." Voroth nodded slowly. "I understand that now." He left without another word. Cole stood at the window, watching alien stars, and wondered if the boy might become something better than what he had been. The answer came at midnight. Cole was not in his room when the assassins came for Grace Holloway. He was in hers, sitting in darkness, waiting. He had known they would come. The prey instinct that had kept him alive on Harkness 4 had reversed itself into something predatory. He could feel danger the way some people felt weather. 3 Kytheran assassins slipped through the ventilation system. Gene-modified for speed and venom. Professional killers who had never failed a contract. They found Cole waiting in Grace's empty chair. "Ambassador Holloway is sleeping in a secure location," he said calmly, "but I can take a message." The first assassin lunged. Cole moved. It was not like the duel. There was no restraint, no teaching. This was survival in its purest form. The thing he had become on a moon full of dead children. The creature that crawled out of the dark when the raiders thought they had won. The first assassin died in 2 seconds. The second in 3. The third almost reached the window before Cole caught him. He did not kill the third. "Tell whoever sent you," Cole whispered, his hand locked around the Kytheran's throat, "that humanity protects its own. Tell them what you saw here tonight. Tell them to be afraid." He let the assassin go. The creature scrambled through the window and vanished into the night, carrying a story that would spread through every shadow network in the galaxy. Commander Cyrith found Cole an hour later. He was cleaning blood from his hands in a basin of water that had turned dark red. "The assassins were not sent by Prince Voroth," she said. "I know. A faction of nobles who couldn't tolerate the embarrassment. They'll need someone to blame." Cole kept scrubbing. "Better if Voroth takes responsibility, learns something from it." "You would frame an innocent man?" "I would give a foolish boy a chance to become a wise man. The nobles who actually sent the killers will know he didn't do it. They'll owe him. That debt might be useful someday." Cyrith was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down across from him. At the tribunal after Harkness 4, they asked me what kind of soldier could have done what you did. Her voice was heavy. I told them the kind that stops being a soldier somewhere in the middle. The kind that becomes something older. A survivor. An animal. A force. Cole said nothing. I have fought in 3 wars, Cyrith continued. I have faced death more times than I can count. I have never been afraid of a single person in my life, until I watched those recordings. Why are you telling me this? Because Vorath is my grandnephew. Because he is young and foolish and cruel, in the way only the sheltered can be. And because I am asking you, one old soldier to another, to let him live through this lesson, to let him become better. Cole dried his hands. The water in the basin sat dark and still. Is that what you think I do? Kill the unworthy? I think you do what is necessary. I think necessity is a god you've worshipped longer than most. He met her eyes, ancient warrior to ancient warrior, across the gulf of species and culture and everything that was supposed to divide them. Tell your grandnephew to claim responsibility for the assassins. Tell him to accept the punishment. It will hurt, but it will not kill him. And when he comes out the other side, he might be something worth respecting. Cyrith nodded slowly. And the real culprits will know they failed. Will know I know who they are. Will spend the rest of their lives waiting for me to collect that debt. Cole stood. Some lessons are taught with blades. Some are taught with patience. She rose to leave, then paused at the door. The recordings showed you fighting for 37 hours. No rest, no stopping. How? Cole was silent for a long moment. There were children hiding in the basement of the school. Every hour I kept fighting was another hour they stayed alive. His voice was empty. When they came to rescue us, they found me standing on a pile of bodies, holding weapons I didn't know how to use, speaking a language I don't remember learning. The Volanthi language, the Raiders' language. Yes, I taught myself their combat forms by studying corpses between waves. I didn't know what else to do. Cyrith looked at him the way you look at something holy and terrible. 11 children survived because of you. 26 children were my responsibility. Cole turned away. 11 is the number I have to live with. The door closed behind her, and Cole stood alone in a room that smelled like blood and alien flowers. He did not sleep that night. He had not slept well in years. The final day of the summit arrived, with 3 suns rising over the Crystal Palace. The Great Hall had been arranged for the vote. Each delegation sat in their designated section, separated by protocol and suspicion, and the invisible walls that species build between themselves. The Volanthi presided from their elevated platforms. The Kitharin clicked nervously in their clusters. The Morvathi drifted in spheres that caught the light like floating jewels. And at the back of the hall, in the smallest section, the human delegation waited. Grace Holloway sat straight in her chair. Cole stood behind her, hands clasped, face empty. Around them, whispers still circulated about the scarred human, the duel, the assassins. The stories had grown larger with each telling. The vote was simple. Would Earth remain at provisional status, or would they be elevated to full membership in the Galactic Concord? One by one, the delegations cast their decisions. The Kitharin voted yes. Their ambassador had received a report the night before. Detailed information about how 3 of their best assassins had been handled by a single human. They wanted to understand this species better, preferably from a position of alliance rather than opposition. The Morvathi voted yes. They were practical creatures. They had seen the recordings from Harkness 4, passed through unofficial channels, and they knew what a single human could do when motivated. They had no desire to discover what an entire species could accomplish. The minor powers fell in line. Yes, yes, yes. The calculations were simple. Earth had something the galaxy had not seen in a long time. Not technology, not resources, not military might. Humans had survivors. The Volanthi voted last. Prince Vorath rose from his seat. His face was pale, and his hands were steady. The punishment for the assassination attempt had been announced that morning. Exile from court, sent to serve on a frontier outpost, where glory went to die. He accepted it without protest. Now he stood before the assembly, and his voice carried through the silent hall. The Volanthi Empire votes to elevate Earth to full membership. He paused. We have learned that strength comes in many forms. Some we had forgotten. Some we never knew. His eyes found Cole in the back of the hall. Something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps. Or respect. The vote was complete. Humanity had risen. Grace kept her composure until they reached the corridor outside. Then she leaned against a crystal wall and let out a breath she had been holding for days. We did it. You did it, Cole said. I just bled on their floor. She laughed. It was the first real laugh he had heard from her since they arrived. You did considerably more than that. They walked together toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Around them, servants and diplomats and soldiers moved in careful patterns, and Cole noticed how they stepped aside when he passed. Not from respect. Not exactly. Something closer to the way people move around a sleeping predator. Prince Vorath caught them before they reached the ship. He moved differently now. 3 days ago, he had glided through the palace like he owned it. Now he walked like someone who had learned that ownership could be taken away. I wanted to thank you, he said to Cole, for the lesson, and for the blame. You didn't send the assassins. No, but taking responsibility for them has taught me more than 20 years of privilege ever did. Vorath reached into his robe and pulled out the child's training blade. I have been practicing with this, as you suggested. Cole studied him. Any progress? I can barely hold it properly. It is too light, too small. It requires a completely different approach than everything I was taught. I understand now why you were not insulted when I gave it to you. Keep practicing. When you can beat a master while holding a toy, you'll understand something about yourself that no one can take away. Vorath bowed, not the shallow gesture of court politics, a real bow from the waist, the kind warriors gave to warriors. I will remember you, Cole Maddox. When I am old and my exile is forgotten, I will tell stories about the human who would not fall. He left. Cole watched him go and saw something in the young man's walk that had not been there before. Weight, purpose, the beginning of something that might grow into real strength. Commander Cyrith was waiting at the ship. She wore ceremonial armor, polished to a mirror shine, and she carried a blade at her hip that had seen 3 wars. Her eyes were ancient and knowing. I pulled your full service record, she said. The classified portions. Cole waited. You were a schoolteacher, before. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. The first true emotion anyone had seen in days. Grief, maybe. Or the shadow of who he used to be. It was gone before it could be named. Elementary science. 3rd graders. His voice caught. Just for a moment. The raiders hit during a field trip. 26 children. I got 11 out. Cyrith said nothing for a long moment. The recording showed you using 17 different Volanthi weapons against the raiders. You learn their combat forms by studying the dead. I had good motivation. You were magnificent. She clasped his forearm, the old greeting of warriors who had faced death together. If humanity ever needs advocates in the Volanthi court, send word. Some of us remember what real strength looks like. She released him and stepped back. Safe travels, Cole Maddox. May your scars never stop telling their stories. The human ship rose from the crystal landing pad and climbed toward the stars. Below, the Volanthi homeworld shrank to a marble of black and silver. Then it was just a point of light. Then nothing. Grace found Cole in the observation deck. He was watching the stars scroll past, his reflection ghostly in the viewport. They'll tell stories about you now, she said. The scarred demon, the human who would not die, the usual exaggerations. Let them, Cole said. Doesn't it bother you? They're turning you into a monster. Cole was quiet for a long time. The stars moved. The ship hummed around them. I was a monster, he said finally, for about 37 hours on a moon that nobody remembers. I did things that kept 11 children alive, and I've spent every day since then trying to be something else. He touched the scar on his jaw, the one he could have hidden, the one he chose to wear. The scars remind me what I'm capable of. The uniform reminds me what I chose instead. Grace nodded. She had known this. It was why she had picked him for this mission. Not despite his history, but because of it. The Concord will send more tests, she said. More challenges. More princes who think humanity is weak because we don't hide our damage. I know. Will you be ready? Cole Maddox watched the stars. Somewhere in that infinite darkness, 11 people had lives they would not have without him. Somewhere in that darkness, enemies were already hearing stories about what he had done. Somewhere in that darkness, a young prince was practicing with a child's blade, learning that true strength came from what you survived, not what you were given. I'm always ready. That's the worst part. The ship sailed on through the void, carrying a scarred man back to a species that had learned the same lesson he had. Written across 1,000 worlds in 1,000 different ways. Survival was not about avoiding pain. It was about deciding, every single moment, to keep standing. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were very, very good at standing.